Hi friends, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. Here's what we're discussing today. Today we have a sad case to talk about out of California, and it's from California federal court, so there's no video from inside the courtroom, so sorry, I guess you wind up having to look at me today. There are rules in every state that govern the practice of law, and today we're going to talk about several of them. The first, and arguably the most important to this case, is Rule 1.15 of the Model Rules of Professional Conduct. It says that a lawyer must keep the client's property safe, and that includes money. And he has to keep it separate from his or her own, meaning he can't put the check from the insurance company into his personal checking account and write you a check from his personal checking account. He can only put it into a separate trust account and write you a check from that separate trust account. That's the way lawyers have been doing business for the last 70 or 80 years. The second rule requires that subordinate lawyers, those guys whose name is not on the door and who are, in some cases, used and thrown away like dirty Kleenex, they have to understand that I was only following orders wasn't a defense at Nuremberg, and it's not a defense to charges of professional misconduct. And the third rule, which is also applicable here, Rule 8.3, says that when a lawyer knows that another lawyer has committed professional misconduct, that lawyer has the responsibility, the duty, in fact, to inform disciplinary authorities. None of those rules are difficult to understand. Unfortunately, they appear to be very difficult for lawyers to follow. Tom Girardi was arguably one of the best lawyers in Los Angeles, which has more lawyers than San Francisco has homeless people. He rose to the top of the profession with a bunch of high-profile cases. He helped get $333 million for the settlement of the Pacific Gas and Electric case. That was the one that was dramatized later with Aaron Brockovich. He was a fellow who was pulling in more than $3 million a year and had the mansion, the Maserati, and the mistress, or if you prefer, wife. He was nearly 80 years of age, and he married one of these real housewives of Beverly Hills, a young and gorgeous blonde who totally married him for love, not money. Really. And just because she left him when the financial trouble hit shouldn't cause you to doubt how real that love was. But all of that, the mansion, the Maserati, and the mistress, none of that was enough. He wanted more. He bought airplanes so that he could fly where he wanted, when he wanted, without having to mix with the great unwashed on a Southwest flight. To say that he spent money like a drunken sailor is unfair to drunken sailors because they will never have the kind of money that he had. Between 2010 and 2020, the prosecutors in this federal case say that he spent $12 million on private jets, $3.8 million on jewelry and country clubs, and $21 million to fund the entertainment career of his then-wife, Erica Jane. He also transferred $26 million from his firm's coffers to his own, though more than $80 million would eventually get tied up in a bankruptcy and go to other creditors. Now, when I practiced in Kansas, which was many years ago, there was a trial lawyer there who was arguably the best trial lawyer in Wichita, and he had a string of similar victories in Kansas like Girardi had in California. The first time I met him, he had on a gold chain that looked like somebody had spray painted a toe chain gold and looped it around his neck. I mean, it was huge. It was gaudy. He had rings on 3 fingers of his left hand and 3 fingers of his right hand, and the one I remember most had a matrix of diamonds across it that looked like it was a solar reflector. Oh, and let's not forget the Rolex on his wrist that looked like a golden manhole cover with hands. The man was literally dripping with gold. Everyone was in awe of the guy. I was too new to get it, I guess. I still don't get it. When you have to put that much gold on to convince people that you're successful, you have a bit of a problem with your self-image, I think. I have a theory. There are some men for whom success isn't enough because, in the first place, they never take time to think about what is enough, and more importantly, what is success? These folks, like Girardi, suffer from an inferiority complex. If Michael Jordan has 2 Ferraris, they have to have 3. If the next best lawyer has a 50-room mansion on the beach, well, they have to have a 70-room mansion in Beverly Hills. And enough is never enough. They are always looking to acquire that next thing that will prove to them that they are worthy. But there's a problem with reputations. Reputations can become self-perpetuating lies. Girardi was widely regarded as the guy to go to if you had a serious injury case. But in reality, at least according to the prosecutors in this case, Girardi was running a Ponzi scheme. He was stealing the client's money and paying off older clients with the money won for newer clients. In the meantime, he was spending that money throwing buckets of cash around like they were going out of style. Accusations that Girardi was withholding money from clients, co-counsel, and litigation lenders dogged him for years. He faced lawsuits for unpaid debts. Yet somehow he always managed to avoid punishment either by the courts or the State Bar of California. And it is alleged that he had pretty deep ties to the State Bar. In 2021, an investigation by the LA Times laid out this pattern of misappropriating funds and lying about it, and that same year, Girardi's attorney claimed Girardi was suffering from dementia and was placed under the conservatorship of his brother. Everyone had wanted to hire Girardi and his firm, Girardi Keese, because they were the big guns, the guys you could go to get millions. And in the last 10 years, all those people got was heartaches. At trial, numerous clients testified about the lies that he made to them. The money was coming in, he'd say. If you just wait a little bit, it'll be here. Just hang on. They would call, they'd get to the point where they had to do something, so they'd make a bar complaint, and suddenly the money would appear. That money probably came from somebody else's case. Some of the clients that were involved in this case, there were 4 of them. Joe Ruy Gomez suffered burns on 80% of his body after a gas line explosion, killing his girlfriend. Judy Selberg's husband was killed in a boating accident. Josefina Hernandez was injured by a faulty medical device. And Erica Saldana's 1-year-old baby was badly injured in a car crash with a drunk driver. She was owed $17.5 million after her child later died. The U.S. attorney prosecuting this case said he picked people in their darkest hour of their lives and told them what to believe. He wasn't fighting for those clients. He was lying to them year after year after year. But even though the bar complaints stacked up, this was Girardi. And you don't shoot at the king without knowing you can hit him, and the bar did absolutely nothing. But all this time, there were people who did know what was going on. One was the financial manager of the firm, who had his own embezzlement scheme going. The others were the associate lawyers. Even if they did not know for sure how the money was being stolen, they had to know when angry clients called and wanted to know where their cash was, that something was amiss. They were getting paid really big bucks to work at a very prestigious firm, and they'd all been told, just like I was when I was a new lawyer, that you never file a bar complaint against another lawyer. It just isn't done. So, it wasn't done. You might wonder what Girardi's defense was. It was dementia. He wasn't in his right mind. He didn't know the gun was loaded. The check was in the mail. At trial, he presented a pretty well-rehearsed picture of a dementia patient. He claimed he didn't even know who his lawyer was. And on the stand, he said, the last thing I would do would be to take someone's money. I wouldn't even think of it. Every client got every penny that every client was supposed to get. Well, that was not the truth, and that wasn't all. In Girardi's closing argument, the federal public defender, Charles Snyder, placed the blame on Girardi's clients' missing funds onto Chris Kamen, the head of the law firm's accounting department and a co-defendant. Snyder called the embezzler the Michael Jordan of fraud and said he stole between $70 million and $80 million from the firm over 10 years. Who was watching the watchers? Well, Snyder claimed Girardi was not paying close attention to the checks he was signing. Check after check was going from Girardi's pocket into Kamen's pocket. Assistant U.S. Attorney Scott Petty pointed out in rebuttal that Girardi drained $14 million from the law firm's client trust account before Kamen was even hired to work for Girardi and Keese. And the one person you absolutely need if you're going to pull off a Ponzi scheme and pilfer money out of clients' settlements, is an inside man. And I think Cayman was the inside man who was cooking the books, perhaps so that other partners wouldn't become aware and were assured things were going well. But let's face it, as I said before, even if the books looked good, the phone calls, the angry clients, and the bar complaints were a giant red flag. In the end, the dementia ruse didn't work. There's a term they used a lot in the military when I was a medic. It was called malingering, essentially claiming to be sick to avoid duty. Girardi had an expert that said he had dementia. The government put up experts who said he was basically faking it. The jury didn't buy his explanations. According to local media, one of the jurors said it wasn't a hard decision. All the evidence was there. The juror claimed that based on Girardi's testimony, he thought maybe the guy wasn't all there, but he also thought the evidence showed that mental decline only began recently after the fraud had occurred. Without saying as much, I think it was pretty clear that he thought this was not a very convincing act, but it was an act. The damage done to the legal profession in this case is very serious. The lawyers who were there at the firm are going to have a very hard time finding a job at another firm. They're going to be tarred with the same brush as Girardi. The belief will be that they had to know, even if one or two of them might not have known. Their careers are damaged beyond repair. Several years ago out in California, there was a respiratory therapist who murdered about 6 patients at Glendale Adventist Hospital. And to this day, one of the things you absolutely can't put on a resume in California is that you worked at that hospital. So, again, you do tend to be tarred with the same brush even when you are not guilty or responsible. Girardi has now been disbarred, and he's been convicted of 4 counts of wire fraud. That could send him to prison for 80 years. At 80 years of age, he's too old to survive a full sentence, and in spite of that, he'll be sentenced to prison. In a year, maybe less, he'll likely be granted compassionate release. It's California, after all. How do you protect yourself from a lawyer like Girardi? Well, you stay involved. You demand to be present at all settlement negotiations because you get to have a voice. Settlement is your decision, not your lawyer's decision. You require an immediate written report if for any reason you can't be there during negotiations. And if you feel you're not getting the straight scoop, you talk to the other lawyers in the firm, and if necessary, hire a different lawyer to go as your intermediary and go find out what's going on with your case. What you don't do is just trust the lawyer, sit back and wait for the money to come in because your money may be in, Grand Cayman along with the lawyer. Well, that's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. If you have the opportunity, you could do a kindness for someone today. That would be wonderful. I'd really like to know what you think about Tom Girardi and what he did, and maybe even why he did it. Is it that he had this acquisition complex, that he had to buy things? Did he have an inferiority complex? What do you think it is? What is at the root of depriving people burned over 80% of their body of their just compensation? Why would anyone ever do that? Let me know what you think. Then, after you have, come on back tomorrow. Join me down here at the beach. We'll talk about something else. If you like this video, here are a few others you might try, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a terrific day, guys.